So, is graduate school right for you? This is what we are talking about today. There are so many considerations. Go away. I apologize. I am seeing extra stuff that I don't want to see. Um, is graduate school right for you? Who am I? Why should you listen to me? Why do I have important information to give you? It's all great questions. So I'm Aaron Coffey. I'm the Assistant Dean for the Graduate School here at Wichita State University. I'm also the Director of Graduate Admissions for the university. I am a first-generation college student from a fairly rural town in Missouri. First in my family to go to undergrad degree, first in my family to get a master's degree. I have an MBA. My bachelor's degree is in management. I have been in graduate admissions for 11 years currently and in higher education for 14 years. It's almost all of my professional experience, and almost all of that experience is specifically working with graduate students and graduate admissions. And just because I always like to start with a fun little fact, feel free in the chat if you'd like, share a little fun fact about yourself. I have ridden an elephant. I was in India when I got to ride an elephant, but I have never ridden a horse because horses terrify me. But elephants are fine. Why are you here? What are you hoping to see? So hold on just a second. Hey, Kim, can you pop back on real fast? And can you let me know, can you guys just see the slides, or are you seeing the Zoom information as well?
We see the slides. Is that what you mean? I see, why are you here? Is that what you mean?
Okay, yep, on my screen, I'm seeing
that's all I see. That's all I see.
Perfect, I just wanted to make sure. So why are you here? This is an interesting time to be considering graduate school. It could either be a great time to be considering it or a bad time to be considering it. We'll talk about that and I'll answer your questions if you have specific questions about that. Is it too early to start planning for graduate school? What degree programs are you interested in? And what piqued your interest in graduate school in general? All of these are reasons that people come and chat with me when they're interested in learning more about the graduate school process, what it means to apply, what it means to consider applying for graduate school. What are some assumptions you have about entering graduate school? How is it different from the undergraduate education you're pursuing right now? Is it different if you choose to come to Wichita State or if you choose to come to or go to a different school? Please ask, when you're asking your questions, I can answer questions generally speaking about entering graduate education at most institutions in the United States. Outside the United States, not as much information on that, but definitely within the US. So don't keep your questions just to WSU. I'm here to help you think about your future at graduate school, be that here or anywhere else that you may choose to go. A lot of you may be here because your chosen profession requires that you get a graduate education in order to enter into that profession, and we can talk about the impact of that as well. So if my slides will progress, we will get going. So, why graduate school? How fast and how far can you advance professionally in your education before you need to go to graduate school? Graduate students have a much higher increased earning power, not only because you're getting those upper level positions, but because the ability to get different and more concentrated positions that have higher monetary value as far as salary goes increases as you get a graduate education. Enhanced job satisfaction, because graduate education leads to specific careers and industries that you want to work in, even above the bachelor's degree. People after getting a master's degree, even if they get it for fun, just enjoy what they're doing more. The freedom to make decisions when you want to change what you're doing and start doing something else, and then the flexibility to change careers much more nimbly than you can even with just a bachelor's degree. So let's talk about earning potential for a little bit. This kind of outlines a lot of the types of education that you can achieve. A doctoral degree, a professional degree, those are a little bit different, and you will see the professional degree on that median usual weekly earnings is a little bit higher than the doctoral degree. With the doctoral, we're really talking kind of the PhD specifically. With professional, we'll be talking about law degrees, MBAs, which is separate from master's degrees, medical doctorates, PsyDs for those of you interested in becoming psychologists, stuff like that. And so you can see kind of as you trickle down the slide that earning potential just continues to get exponentially bigger. There's a big drop between professional degree and master's degree, and then quite a big jump between bachelor's degree and master's degree. Some of you will have a choice to do this, some of you won't. Some of you will be going into professions that tend to be underpaid and undervalued, but still require a higher education. So definitely talk to your faculty and advisors if you're in one of those areas and really interested in knowing more about that. They're always happy to chat with you about your future career goals. As is the Career Development Center. So what is graduate education? Graduate education at its core involves specialized knowledge and concentrated study in one area. You know, you don't have general educations at the graduate degree, education courses at the graduate degree. Your bachelor's degree is 120 credits, you know, typically about 40 courses. At the graduate level, you're taking usually between 10 and 12 courses for the master's degree. Obviously, if you go into the doctoral level, that can get much, much bigger, but also involves a whole lot more research. And so you're really focusing those 10 core courses on very, very narrow areas of understanding and of research. Requires active participation in and or application of research. It's no longer kind of read this and summarize it. It's read this, synthesize it, understand it, and then apply it to a real world experience that might relate specifically to you or to move forward a research question you have. Answering research questions, coming up with new knowledge it happens at the graduate level. That's what we do in graduate school, depending on your program. And then offers professional and academic degrees. And we're going to talk about the different degree types because there are a lot of types of degrees in graduate education, and we're going to get to that in just a little bit. So this is a question I'm sure many of you are asking yourselves now, especially for those of you that are graduating in May going into an uncertain job market. Is it too late to apply for graduate school? Should I come now? Should I come later? When's the right time for graduate education? Always is the right time for graduate education, depending on what your goals are, but there aren't any hard and fast rules. Some programs that you may be interested in may have application deadlines that have already passed, so always make sure before just submitting an application that you have met that application deadline. Talk with faculty and prospective employers, as well as your fellow students and those graduate students already in those programs, and just see what their guidance is. You know, historically, MBA programs like to see 2 to 3 years of work experience. That was kind of more when they were full-time programs that you kind of quit your job and went back. And so they wanted that. Many MBA programs right now are part-time programs where you're taking, you know, 1 or 2 classes a semester while also working full-time. So it's more of a complementary education to the work profession versus a training program that will train you to do something else once that full-time education is completed. That's just one example of many of the types of programs that we have. Some that you'll see at some institutions you just attend during the summer and you take classes during 4 summers and then you get your degree at the end of that. And some are full-time resident programs where you're going to be there for 4 or 5 years full-time and you really won't have an opportunity to work outside of education. So definitely understanding what you will be getting into based on the degree that you've chosen to pursue is really important in understanding if you should pursue that now or later. Taking time between undergraduate graduation and graduate school may be worth it depending on economic climate. This presentation is from the fall before we knew about the current economic climate, but the economics of attending graduate school is always important. Graduate school is expensive, not terribly more so than your undergraduate education, but a lot of the scholarship and grant funding opportunities that exist at the undergraduate level do not exist at the graduate level. Most of our federal financial aid at the graduate level is loans. Many institutions do have graduate assistantships if you're able to work, and typically those come with stipends and or some form of tuition remission. Just depends on the school, and that is not standard at any schools, even the ones here in Kansas. Research and know the career outlook for your industry profession. What is your starting point? A lot of times it's okay to wait on graduate education because those entry-level positions, they don't want somebody with a master's degree entering into those positions. They want somebody to enter into those, get that 2 or 3 years of work experience, and then go back and get their graduate degree so that they can, you know, get that within 2 years and then get promoted after they have about the 5 years of experience. Some professions require it before even entering into the profession. The Occupational Outlook Handbook, that's the Occupational Outlook Handbook, is a wonderful tool to look and see and understand what is the potential career growth of the profession that you're interested in and those complementary professions if, you know, there might be a sidetrack that you go down. Obviously take advantage of the Career Development Center to help you understand that information and apply it to your future career goals as well. So making the decision, this is a lot of self-reflection. A lot of people don't think that it should take as much self-reflection as it does to decide if going to graduate school is right for you. But it really needs to be a conscious decision that this is the path you're going to pursue over the next, 1.5 to 3 years. Take an honest evaluation of yourself. Are you committed to continuing your schooling for another 2 years? That's a big decision and a big commitment. You've been in, if you started right after your your high school degree, you've been in college or high school or middle school, for 16 to 17 years now, and you're committing to another 2 to 4 years, depending on the degree that you want to pursue. Is now the right time to do that? And are you ready to do that? Do you have a career ambition goal in mind? Do you know what you're going to graduate school for? It's great to take graduate classes just for fun. Because they're those specialized content courses, they can be very, very interesting. Graduate school is a pretty expensive hobby if you're just doing it just for fun. So make sure that you understand, why are you going to graduate school? What do you hope to do with that degree or that certificate once you get it? And is that the right thing for you? And then weigh the cost of the graduate degree against the benefits. And these just aren't the tangible costs. But what benefits are there to waiting or not? They could be financial benefits. If you choose to go full time, you're losing a couple years of full time income. Your retirement account is not something that you should be ignoring right now. It definitely is something you should be thinking about. And why might now be better than later? Some professions, it really is longevity in that career that matters the most. And so getting the education done now so that you can just start and kind of keep going for the next 20 or 30 years might be best for what your hopes are over the next, lifetime. And then commitment to continued learning. We want you to continue learning, whether that's at the graduate level, the undergraduate level, for academic credit or for not academic credit. We want you to continue learning. We hope that will drive you towards a graduate degree wherever you choose to go. We love seeing that. But if not, know that if the graduate education might not be something you need. It's definitely not for everyone, and it's not right for everyone. So take that time in consideration. Talk to your undergraduate advisor, talk to your graduate advisor, graduate coordinators, and we'll talk a little bit about those in a little bit. So let's just talk about some general entry requirements into graduate school once you've made the decision to attend graduate school. A baccalaureate degree from a regionally accredited institution, strong grades in your major field area, preferably a strong GPA overall. And I typically get questions, so some of you may be hopping in the chat right now to ask, what is that minimum GPA people are looking for? We'll address that kind of at the end because there's not a solid answer. It can be very individual. So if you have questions about that, leave those in the chat box so that I can, if I can't answer them now, I can get back with you later on your specific questions. Standardized test scores, which we'll spend some time talking about. Resume, letters of recommendation, all very specific things. Definitely work with the Career Development Center if you don't have your resume in line yet. That definitely needs to be a strong component if they are requesting it. Many programs don't care about resumes, but many do. And then goal statements and statement of intents. And we'll talk a little bit about those because those can be a little confusing. It's the one thing that I see applicants go just completely in the wrong direction on the most often. They just start talking about things that don't have any relevance to the graduate application at all. Or they go back kind of in time to their childhood and they start explaining, why they decided to do something when they were 5, which is great that you've had that passion for so long, but I need to know what can keep driving that passion forward, not what was driving the decision to kind of do it 15, 20 years ago. But we'll talk a little bit about that too. Looking at programs in schools is so critical. Like you did when you hopefully picked Wichita State, understanding the type of school that you want to go to and the environment where you will be successful is so important to your future success in graduate school because it is so much more intensive work-wise than some of your undergraduate programs. So consider the institution type. Do you want to stay at a school like Wichita State, a large 4-year research-intensive institution? Is this the time that you want to transition to a smaller school? At the graduate level, I have to say, sometimes it's not about the school, the size of the school itself, it's about the size of the program. You can have some pretty small schools that have very large graduate programs in your area, and it might make you feel a little bit dwarfed, like you don't have an opportunity to stand out, versus going to a larger school that may limit the size of their program, might give you a better opportunity to connect with both your classmates and faculty, and the reverse may be true as well. the size and the location of the institution, the reputation of not only the institution, but the program itself is much more critical at the graduate level. We all want to go to a program that has a really good reputation, and we want to go to an institution that has a really good reputation. But the next line on here, faculty also have their own reputations. And if you're doing research, aligning yourself with a faculty member that has a really great reputation in their research field, and that can help you piggyback your success, definitely take advantage of that and take time to consider that opportunity as well. Programs, funding, and facilities, if that's important to you, if you plan to be a funded student, have one of those graduate teaching or research assistantships, that can be important. The stipends on those can vary greatly. Is the program itself selective? You know, we have some programs at Wichita State that are cohort based. They admit a very specific number of students no matter how many apply. And so we have some programs that, you know, they admit 30 or 40 and they get close to 1,000 applications a year. So how competitive are the programs that you're trying to get into, and really what are they looking at? Are you competing with other applicants, or really you just competing with those admission requirements listed in the catalog? Course listings is another interesting one. Make sure as you're looking at two different programs, even if they're the same program name, look at the courses that are available in those programs and help that guide you to which program you're more interested in. The faculty are important, but maybe the programs that you're looking at, one has a concentration that you're really interested in, and that, you know, they have 15 hours of electives in the 30-hour degree program, and that's what's going to help you get the degree. So whether that English degree that you're going to get, that Master's of Arts in English, at two different institutions, the coursework you take to get that same degree can be very, very different. And you may enjoy one much more than the other one just based on the courses that are available in that particular department. The social climate, you know, the environment where it is, what state it's in, is it where you can be successful and learn and grow as a person, and then also the placements of their graduates, those career placements post-graduation. If you're going into a master's degree and hope to springboard that into a doctoral degree, what are the doctoral placement rates from that particular program within, and I'm not saying, you know, immediately after, but, you know, within 1 to 2 years of graduation, how good are they at getting people into those doctoral programs, especially ones that you may be interested in entering as well. So definitely take that into consideration. Questions to ask. This is questions to ask the institution, either by checking yourself, contacting the graduate coordinator, talking to other people at that school. What are the admission requirements? Very, very important to know the admission requirements. How many apply and how many are accepted is also a good number to have. As somebody who oversees about 50 different programs, I don't always have this information readily available. I can also tell you sometimes based on this question that, you know, I mentioned earlier with the cohort-based programs or not, whether you're competing against other applicants on the strength of your application, or whether I'm just looking at every single individual and making the decision, yes, this person is a good fit, or no, this person is not a good fit. And I'm not necessarily comparing them or ranking them with other applicants, which some programs do. Who are the faculty? Are they people you're interested in working with? What's the philosophy of education at the department? Do they want you very, very fully engaged, or is it more kind of passive providing that education? You know, you read the textbooks, you read the online articles, you watch some videos, and then you take a test. There's so many different ways to go in there. What do the physical facilities look like? For those of you doing research in lab-based and science-based programs, the physical facilities and the newness of those facilities can be very important. What are the costs and financial support options? Again, going back to assistantships, at the graduate level, we have things called fellowships, which are sort of kind of like grants. They're kind of free money that you get for studying in a particular institution in a very specific area. Do they offer travel funding? Do they offer professional development opportunities? You know, kind of all of those things are questions that you can ask at the graduate level and use to make a decision to attend the right program for you. And finally, is it required for my chosen career path? Some of you that you know you want to be something specific, I always pull out a professional counselor, a licensed mental health profession. Those typically require graduate degrees. The states license those, and you're required to be a graduate level educated person in order to get that license. So those of you that want to be professional counselors, that want to go into a lot of the health professions, you don't really have a choice but to get a graduate degree. But finding the right school for you is still critically important to ensuring that you enjoy yourself as much as you can while getting that graduate education. So finally, let's talk about the different types of graduate education, because I know I talk a lot about degrees, but those are by no means the only types of education, and nor are they the only types of um, paths to consume in order to get a graduate education. We have a lot of people that come back and take individual courses. Sometimes they're professional development, sometimes they're for personal fulfillment. History, oddly, is a big area where a lot of people will come back and get master's degrees in history just because they're interested in the content area. It has nothing to do with their work goals. So I always find that a little bit fascinating and kind of exciting. I hope I feel that passionate about something other than my chosen area in the future. Graduate certificates are great training opportunities. We have quite a few of them at Wichita State. They're typically 12 to 15 credit hours and oftentimes can be later wrapped into a graduate degree if you wanted to stop after you got the certificate for a year or two and then come back later. So definitely take advantage of those. A master's degree, which is the traditional degree, which is about 2 years. A professional degree, which is between 2 to 5 years. Again, some of those professional degrees are doctorate degrees and some of them are master's degrees. So it really just kind of depends. And then here, when we say doctorate, we're really talking about that research-based doctorate, the PhD program, and that really, depending on the area you're going into, can be anywhere between 4 and 10 years. 4 years for some of those more non-science and non-research, kind of heavy research-based programs that might be classified closer to professional programs. For some of the liberal arts degrees, the social science degrees, some of those, average anywhere from 8 to 10 years to take. History, philosophy, women's studies, political science, those PhD programs can take quite a very long time to get to. And then some of them, anywhere in between 5 to 7 years, depending on how long your dissertation takes. Master's versus PhD in research. A master's degree is associated with a support or assisting role when performing research. A PhD is associated with a lead role on a project or a research team. A master's degree, somebody in a master's degree program is likely assisting in finding new areas of study and research. Somebody getting their PhD is usually finding those new areas and entering into them and deciding whether or not it is an area worth pursuing for research, which is really, really awesome. If you have questions about these, please leave them in the chat box. What do all those letters mean? This is one of my favorite slides. I know many of you are probably getting a Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts. Some schools have Bachelors of Business Administration, Bachelors of Music. There's a couple others at the graduate level. It's kind of a free-for-all for what they want to call your degree. And this is a small sampling of any number of degree names that you might get. For me personally, these letters matter a whole lot less than the degree that you're getting. For some of those professional-based programs, however, these letters matter quite substantially. So always double check, especially if you're in a career-driven field that's driven by the graduate education, that you are double checking with those licensing agencies, with your faculty, and making sure that you're picking an appropriate program for you. I'm not going to go through all of these. Feel free to take a look at them. A DO, for instance, is a doctor of osteopathy, kind of a offshoot of MD. There's one of those schools in Kansas City if you're interested in that. AUD, which we have at Wichita State, is an audiology doctorate, a doctorate of audiology. And MPhil is pretty straightforward. It's a master of philosophy. In some countries, if you're not interested in studying in the United States and you want to go to another country, you will see that a lot of their master's degrees fall under MPhil, a master of philosophy, whereas in the States, many of ours fall under those first two categories, which is a master of science or master of arts. At the very beginning, I talked about how it's a very specialized and concentrated area graduate education is. That's why all of these other ones, we see the name of the degree itself aligning with the content that you're studying, because it is that specific. That's just saying a master of science or a master of arts, that's fine. But if they can tell you mine is an MBA, which is a Master's of Business Administration, my degree is in Business Administration, and that's pretty straightforward. Don't let this scare you, but definitely be aware of it. If you're seeing some letters you don't understand, Google them and figure out, kind of what they mean, because it can be interesting sometimes. So this is typically the point where I would take questions, but I don't think there's an easy way to do that. So I'm going to take a drink, take a moment, think about it, ask your questions, look at this. This is the application process, and we'll get back in just a second. Okay, hopefully if you have a dog, a cat, you've pet the dog, you've pet the cat, you're back with me. This is great. So request information. Please, please, please request information. There's a lot you can find out on a website. We have, robust websites at Wichita State, but I always enjoy seeing people request information. It adds a level of interest. I can give your information as somebody who has a centralized admissions process at Wichita State. I can give your information to faculty in the departments to reach out and contact you. Sometimes with request informations, you're literally just requesting something be mailed to you or emailed to you. Other times you are requesting specific phone calls back from faculty, but always be the one that reaches out and expresses your interest. They might not always get back with you. It's not necessarily critical, but it's always good to help create those connections. And a lot of graduate education is just about networking and creating those connections. Apply early. I can't emphasize this enough. Please, please, please. Deadlines are great. They're there for a reason because that's kind of the cutoff deadline. And some schools will say, oh, you don't need to apply until the deadline. All you're going to do if you apply up against the deadline is stress yourself out and make yourself panic about the process. So always, always, always apply early, even if it's just a few days early. Give yourself that buffer zone. Every single year, we reject applicants because they applied an hour after the application deadline closed because they vacationed, they went home, and they didn't pay attention to the time zone change, and they just missed the deadline through no fault of their own, but it still got missed, and we still won't consider them for admission. So make sure you're applying early, that you have your materials ready to go. And then know the application requirements. I went over most of this stuff before, so I'm not going to hit it again because I'm getting ready to talk about each one individually, but make sure that you are giving them everything they need in the application. And also know when you're applying, do you have to have everything ready? Or by the deadline, do you have to have everything ready? Or can you submit stuff after the deadline and have it ready? A lot of people think an application deadline just means the application has been submitted by the deadline. That's not always true. A lot of times it's the application has been submitted and we've received all of the supporting materials necessary to have a finished application. So if you took the GRE last week and the application deadline is this week, you're not going to meet the deadline because the GRE takes between 2 and 4 weeks to get us your score results. And so you're going to miss the whole review process. The same with official versus unofficial transcripts. We admit and review students off of unofficial transcripts. Some schools require official transcripts in order to be reviewed. So make sure you understand that difference as you're going through the application process. And always, 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 it's better to ask and get your thought affirmed than to not ask and be wrong and miss that opportunity because you just misunderstood the process. So the application forms. You know, we don't collect a lot of information on you all whenever you apply for graduate school. It's kind of a narrow set of information that we collect. So we want you to fill everything out that we have and fill it out as completely and as accurately as possible. So complete all required questions. Most applications won't let you submit unless they're answered. Present information concisely and correctly. Don't exaggerate qualifications, requirements. Don't be too succinct. We do want to know about you, but just be clear. Excuse me, double check for presentation errors. We get a lot of mistakes in goal statements and letters of recommendation. If you're asking for a letter of recommendation, make sure that your recommender knows how to spell your name. If you have 2 last names, that they include both last names. Just little things like that, which, you know, it's so easy to overlook, but so critically important to know that you're taking the process of applying to graduate school seriously. Sign the application, include the appropriate application fee. You may see some schools with the application fee that have an application fee of $0. You may see some schools that have an application fee of $125. You may see some programs that have multiple application fees and multiple testing fees. So make sure that you understand, you know, kind of what you're looking at there. I think I talk about application fees a little bit later, but if I don't mention it then, I'd say, you know, when you're applying for graduate school, having kind of a reserve of between $400 and $700, depending on how many schools you're going to be applying to, is a good rule of thumb to ensure that you have all the necessary funds to cover those applications if you plan on submitting that many applications. And is there only one application? Sometimes many programs have supplemental applications where the university may have their general application and then the department requires a supplemental application and application fee. Sometimes those are done before the big application, sometimes those are done after, but make sure that you understand all of those application requirements. Letters of recommendation. We're going to talk about this in 2 different ways. The first is the physical letter of recommendation that your recommender may write. The second is the form that many institutions use now to send recommendation requests to specific people provided by you during the application process. So first is request the required number by your program. Please do not request more, and certainly do not request less because they won't consider that a completed application. If your department wants 2 recommenders, they want 2. They don't want 4. They just want 2. And if you request 4, they may only use the first 2 that they receive. So if the second 2 on your list may be lower, but get their recommendations in first, and maybe their credentials aren't quite as good as the first 2 recommenders, they're probably still only going to use those first 2 because that's when your application completes and they're not going to add extra stuff to your application once it's done. Select qualified individuals. What that word means, qualified, it can mean a variety of different things based on the programs that you're applying to. Make sure you're reading the program's outline for what a qualified individual is. Faculty are always a great example of a qualified individual, but even then, some programs, you know, if you're applying to a medical school and you get your philosophy instructor to write you a letter of recommendation and somebody else gets, you know, a biology instructor or somebody in a doctoral program in medicine, those can, even though they're both good recommendations, can be weighted differently. So do take that into consideration. Provide sufficient time for submission when asking for recommendations. A good rule of thumb is to ask for the recommendation 1 to 2 months before you need it. Some of us, Wichita State included, once you put their information in our application and you hit submit, it automatically sends the recommendation email out. So let them know they may be getting something, but also give them a deadline to submit their stuff back. And you can usually monitor your application progress in both systems. Use standard forms and envelopes if provided. If some schools want you to send things back to them via paper, some schools want them to be uploaded. You will always have a right to waive your right to review an application or not. There's a specific law that permits that. Always feel free to waive your right or not. That's completely up to you. Do know that some recommenders will not provide recommendations unless you waive that right. They are able to do that. Anybody can tell you no, they won't provide that recommendation. So make sure you're having that conversation with your recommender before you request it of them. Give references, information about the program, super, super critical. I would not be shocked. I know this is going to shock some of you. I would not be shocked if some of you have recommenders that ask you to write the letter of recommendation simply so they can sign it. There are pros and cons to that. I'm not providing a comment on whether or not you should do that. I certainly don't endorse that, but do not be surprised if somebody asks that of you. We do hear about that happening fairly regularly. And then write thank you notes, show your appreciation for them, especially if they're writing unique letters for each of the programs you're applying to. So they may be writing anywhere between 3 and 6 letters. Those letters of recommendation take a lot of time and a lot of work, especially if they're taking their time to write them. So make sure that you're having that open conversation with them and thanking them in the right ways. Essays or personal statements. I mentioned before, these can go awry very, very quickly. Follow the directions. Some essays and personal statements, you're required to answer very specific questions. If you're required to answer questions, don't do anything else. Answer those questions, provide the essay or the personal statement, and be done with it. If they're kind of more open, you always want to relate it back to the program. Sometimes we see these narratives, which are lovely narratives and wonderful stories that people are telling, but at the end of the review, if I'm not sure what you were trying to say on how you could be successful in the program that you're applying to, it was not a successful essay or personal statement. It was simply a story. So make sure that you're always relating it back to those professional goals, what you want to do in the program, what you did to prepare yourself to get into the program, and what you hope to do when you get out of the program. Those are kind of always the 3 critical components of, of a really good essay, if it's just kind of an open-ended question. Address the content requirements. Don't go overboard, but don't be too brief that you haven't provided any valuable information in what you've written. Identify what sets you apart from other applicants. This one's projecting a little bit. This is not me saying write about your deficiencies and how you've overcome them. Some people do that. Oh, I really want to do this, and I wasn't successful in these areas in the past, but I will be in the future. All you've done is draw my attention to your failures, which failures are fine, but I want to see what your successes are. So talk about your successes, certainly talk about your challenges if you've overcome them and then been successful, but do keep it positive and motivated versus kind of getting into the nitty gritty. This is how I've, overcome negative and why my future will be better because of it. proofread and double proof, have somebody else read it, make sure it's 100% accurate. If it needs to be in a specific format for your chosen profession, if it needs references and citations, make sure those are all included appropriately based on the citation model of your industry. And then seek feedback from others, just because it's always good. Make sure the feedback from others is from people who have gone through the process, faculty, friends that have applied and gotten admitted to graduate school, so that they can provide some good examples. Again, there's not one right or wrong way to write most essays and personal statements. You just have to know the intent that you're trying to achieve by writing it. Okay, we're going to spend a very brief amount of time on standardized test scores because I think I have 3 or 4 slides on it, but it's all pretty straightforward. We do have testing locations in Wichita. For those of you that are here in Wichita or near Wichita, locate the nearest test prep programs, find out when testing dates are offered. Some programs are offered regularly, some are not. Collect test guides and do the practice test. Please, please, please do the practice test. My minimum recommendation is 3 to 4 practice tests over kind of the course of 3 to 6 months. And this last bullet here, which is complete 3 to 6 months prior to the application deadline. And you should be studying for 3 to 6 months prior to that. So the testing process can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months if you're doing it correctly. Glad that you guys are attending now, especially for some of you that have fall application deadlines coming up in November, December for your interested programs, because really this is the perfect time to start studying if you have to take the GRE or the GMAT, to start studying for that particular exam. What do admission tests do? You'll see a lot of programs don't require them. So what do they do exactly? Some of our programs at Wichita State do require admission tests, and we use them as a factor in consideration for admission. So from ETS, who creates the GRE, standardized tests allow the comparison of test takers from different areas of the state, the country, and the world by testing the same or similar information in the same testing conditions. A little bit of this is changing with COVID-19 because a lot of our stuff is going a lot of the testing sites are closed, and so we're seeing some interesting at-home opportunities for testing, specifically from GRE. This is a brief list. There are many, many more tests than this, of some standard exams that may have to be taken in order to get admitted to your preferred program. Many schools accept the GRE kind of as a general exam. GMAT tends to be more for those interested in business MBA specifically. LSATs for law, MCATs for medical, MAT, which is a much smaller exam, is for education, and PCAT for pharmacy. There's a whole lot of others, but the GRE is by far kind of one of the biggest ones that people have to take. Asking yourself this question though, and when you're researching the programs that you want to attend, we do see a lot of students that don't want to go to a program that requires them to take the GRE for one reason or another. For them, it's a very easy, that's not the right program for me because they require the GRE. But these are some questions to ask yourself. Is the test required for admission? What is the common score, the common minimum score required? Many times they'll put a range on the website of, we accept, our last class admitted was between this GRE score and this GRE score. Here was the max, here was the min, here was the median. Make sure that you understand and what that is. What is the mean GPA and test score combination in the most recent cohort? Sometimes it's a ranking system, and so those with a 3.2, 3.3 GPA, but a rock star GRE score may still be admitted versus the person with a 3.8 GPA and a very low GRE score may be rejected. It really all just depends on what the whole application packet is telling, because it's your story to tell, and those numbers unfortunately are a little bit out of your control. How competitive is admission to the program? Super, super critical. Do they have minimum benchmark cutoffs that if you don't get a specific score, a lot of times in the technical fields, we see this on the quantitative section of the GRE, if you don't get a minimum, 155 on that, they won't even consider you for admission. Do they give you that information? That can save you some time and some money from applying to that institution if you wouldn't even be considered for admission. And then some people realize after they take the GRE, the GMAT, they're not ready to go to graduate school just yet, which is totally fine. Once you've taken these tests, you do typically have 5 years to use them. Some programs may require tests within the last 2 years, but you can usually get your score reports from these companies within 5 years. So do keep that in mind. I do know for those of you that I believe are taking the LSAT and the MCAT, when those are offered is much more restrictive than things like the GRE and GMAT, which kind of tend to be daily and weekly anymore. And so there's that. Preparing for the test. Please, 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 please. please prepare for the test. Study just like you would study it for any of your other classes. And there's a couple tips and tricks I'll give you. So there are free study guides out there for these tests. There are web tips, our library, Abla Library on campus has some wonderful resources for GRE and GMAT. You know, those books are available. You can certainly purchase them at the bookstore at a reused bookstore. Do make sure if you're purchasing books, flashcards, which is under that second dollar sign, that they are for the exam that's currently being offered. These exams do update themselves, not fairly regularly, but definitely every 3 to 5 years. GRE just went through a big update, I believe, a couple years ago. They may change how they score things. They may change their scoring scale altogether. So make sure you're studying the most recent information for the upcoming test, and note if something, you know, is changing. Test prep companies by third parties, this is half for. I've seen these range anywhere from $800 to $3,000 to take these test preps. If it's that serious for you, that's fantastic. I think self-motivation is a key on prepping for these tests. So just watch your budget and make sure that you're taking the time to study appropriately. Again, plan to spend 3 to 4 months or more preparing for the exam, and take a minimum of 3 pre-tests. The 3 reasons to study are content, understanding, and speed. And I do want to talk about each of these for a second. Content, these tests aren't designed to find out, you know, kind of what's buried in the recesses of your mind. It's there to find out if you can figure out an answer on a test. And that's kind of all it's there to do. When you take the GRE, and this is where understanding comes in, all the GRE can really measure is your ability to take the GRE, your ability to take information presented in a very, very standardized testing format and then find the correct answer. On the math sections, a lot of times it's not about finding the right solution. It's about finding which ones are most likely wrong and then going with the correct answer. And that's where speed comes into play. These are timed exams and you do need to answer the questions. These are tests where if you get a question wrong, it does penalize you. So do keep that in mind. It's kind of, if you imagine kind of going up a hill, every time you get a question wrong, you kind of, you know, take 3 steps backwards. And then when you get another question right, you know, you've already used that energy to go up a little bit. So you're not able to go up as quickly. Focusing on those first 10 questions is so critical to getting you off on a positive jumping off point that I would tell anyone taking these tests, take quite a bit of time answering those first 10 questions and then know, you know, with confidence that you're going to get those right. And then as you progress, if you get some mistakes done later, it will impact you much, much less than if you get any of those first 10 questions wrong. Again, these tests are really designed to know how well you can take the test, which is why that study period is so critical, because it's going to be very, very different than any other test you've taken before. These are just some general costs associated with tests. You know, I mentioned the 400 to 700 or 500 to 600, I can't remember what I said exactly, money that you need to have when you're ready to apply for graduate school. This is yet another cost that comes to applying for graduate school. These tests are not inexpensive and many students may take them more than once. That's completely your decision. I think with adequate preparation, preparing to take it once or twice is certainly good. When you do take a test more than once, many times the institution will get both test scores, and some may average more than one attempt, some may only use your highest attempt. So make sure that you're asking the schools that you're applying to that information. Not going to talk a lot about interviews because they can vary so much based on program, but just keep this in mind. Review your application, prepare some questions for the interview. Some are going to be panel interviews. Some are going to be day-long interviews where they just bring everybody to campus and talk to people kind of throughout the day. Follow business decorum. Please keep in mind that from the moment you get to the parking lot to the moment you leave the parking lot, you are at an interview. Treat it just like you would any other job interview, and make a good impression on everyone that you meet, because everyone is probably having a say in whether or not you get admitted to the program. Be mindful of nonverbal cues, especially in your responses or reactions to other people around you. And then practice with your friends, understanding, you know, professional handshakes. In this time, it's probably not great to be handshaking. So what is an appropriate way to respond if somebody wants to shake your hand and you're just not kind of comfortable with that, which is completely okay. Funding a graduate education, mentioned fellowships already, not going to hit on that again. Graduate assistantships, they're really a wonderful opportunity. They're how I paid for a lot of my graduate education, because I did go to school full-time while in my master's degree program. lots of different kinds of assistantships, not just in your academic unit either. I know at the university, the graduate school has assistantships. A lot of student affairs divisions have assistantships. It's how we kind of keep the campus going, as well as those research assistantships. And then, as I'm sure some of you had, some of your graduate teaching assistantships as well. Loans, there are federal and private loans. Both are viable options depending on how much your education costs. The direct loan limit, which is through the federal, just like your undergrad direct loans, if you have those. The graduate student lending max is significantly greater than the undergraduate limit. It's about, I think it's like $19,500 a year. Take out what you need. Remember, it has to be paid back, whether it become through income-driven repayment or not. And then those private loans obviously have a lot less protections, a lot fewer protections. But some programs are simply so expensive that private loans may be necessary. Some scholarships are available at the graduate level. That just depends on institution and program specific. And then for those of you that are working, getting a graduate degree is definitely something to start saving up for, like you would your retirement account, saving for a car or a house purchase. Feel free to stash some of that money away to use for future uses. General strategies for success, just a couple slides left. So if you have questions, make sure you're getting those in the box below or to the side, wherever it is. Know yourself, obtain funding if that's something you're really interested in doing. Know the type of program that you're going into. We did talk about master's versus bachelor or master's versus PhD. Don't talk a lot about that because it's so individual to a specific person. Some PhD programs and doctoral programs require you to have a master's degree before you get in there. Some do not. Some they just want you to apply after your bachelor's degree. So make sure to take care and understand what you're applying to and what the expectation is of the program that you're entering into. Be organized, keep track of where you've applied and what you've done. If you follow up, be respectful and professional in emails. I cannot tell you how many emails I get asking from applicants asking just about their general application status, where they don't introduce themselves in their email and they don't address the email to the person they're sending it to. That's just not a big positive thing to see whenever I open my email and somebody's asking me to follow up on something that they can probably do themselves and then still not address me or my staff professionally. So make sure to keep that in mind. This is a business relationship between us and the applicants, us and you. So please treat it as such. Get to know the people, get to know the people in the program, get to know the program before you do it. I know a lot of you don't have Facebook, don't have social media. Well, our versions of old-fashioned social media, but we do still post a lot, and a lot of schools really do still engage on Facebook. It's a really nice way of storing information. So stalk their pages, figure out what they're doing, see if they have Twitters and follow those. Sometimes you can catch some application discount codes or find out about events that you may be able to go to. And then schedule personal and family time whenever you do get into a program. It's, a lot of it's very rigid and a lot of it's very structured. So make sure that you understand what you're committing to, and kind of all of these can also apply to being successful once you've entered the program. Also know, if it's not the right program for you, it's okay not to finish. I know there's a big financial commitment there. There's a lot of people that start graduate education and don't finish. I want you to get a graduate degree, but I want you to get the right graduate degree for you. And so if that's not the first program you've selected, that's okay. Take a break, take a step out, come back, and maybe you decide later, hey, this was the right program for me, or maybe you need to pivot and go to a different area. That's completely okay. Just make sure that you're understanding what you want to do, what goals you have and that you want to achieve, and that you're able to achieve those with the degree that you're getting. So I have to plug it because you all are current students here, and it's my job to recruit graduate students to Wichita State. So graduate studies at Wichita State. We are regionally accredited by the North Central Association, which is the highest standard of learning and academic scholarship required. We offer both professional and academic degrees. We have 47 master's degrees. We're actually up to 13 doctoral degrees, and 1 ed specialist degree for those of you interested in becoming a school psychologist. Most of our students in the graduate programs at Wichita State, outside of the College of Engineering, are at the master's level. Many of our master's students are both, but we have a wonderful variety of degrees if you're interested in getting a graduate education. For those of you that know you want to go to Wichita State and you're maybe juniors now and you want to know, how can I get this done a little bit faster? We do have some opportunities for you to start getting graduate credit while you're still an undergraduate. through dual and accelerated degree programs, senior rule, and then to make yourself more competitive for graduate entry, undergraduate research. If you have questions about any of these, don't hesitate to contact your graduate coordinator for the program, even if you are an undergrad, because they're the ones that are going to help oversee your process in applying to these particular programs. So, and that's my contact information. And that's the general graduate school inbox. If you have questions, feel free to shoot those. Graduate degrees, wichita.edu/graduate degrees is where all of the graduate degrees are listed on our website. I know I can kind of talk fast sometimes. I apologize if I went a little too fast for some of you. Always happy to follow up on additional things. So now